All right. Now let's start off with some questions. Anyone got any like quick questions or, long questions? Who really cares? For psychosophy, just in general. Like something, from yesterday or just whatever.
So, I know this is going to be about the subtypes, and for each, I don't, I don't know what to call it. I want to default to calling it like a function because of like MBTI and whatever. But like
Attitude.
each, like emotion, physics, whatever, all those things. How many subtypes do they each have?
Each one in
Seventeen.
psychosophy has three subtypes. They
Okay,
don't have, they
and
remove
is
the
it
one
different
that
in?
directly. What
Oh,
was
sorry.
it?
Is that different in? I don't know how to pronounce it, but is it different in AP, like
Yeah,
the
attitudinal
subtypes?
psyche has, I believe, five subtypes. That one would be, um, they would have like a zero, a one, two, three, and four, and five. Uh,
Okay,
actually, I can actually probably
but
pull
but those
something
are
up there.
different.
Yeah, that is
Okay.
different. That would be a different system. Actually, I'll pull something up on attitudinal psyche because I understand that if you're coming from like a PDB, you probably remember the name of attitudinal psyche. Let's see here.
Because originally when I learned about psychosophy, I thought that like it was the exact same as AP and it was just like a different name. But they do seem very similar, but I do understand that there are differences.
Yeah, so here's the difference right here. You see this concept of like the one, two, three, four, and zero. Yeah, my bad. So zero being adaptation. I mean, we don't really need to get into this, but we can recognize that this is different. Maybe another day we'll go over AP. Okay.
Okay,
Do we have
sure.
any other questions? Let's encourage it. Just something, 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 anything.
I wasn't here at the last half of the introduction, so did you go over sextas or clubs?
Yes, we did, but I can brush over those again. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
All right. I'll pull that up. It'll be clubs and sextas. I'll send this in the chat as well. All right. So here we see this idea right here. Strong emotion in physics. This refers to those with emotion and physics in their strong placements. Might be the top two. Of course, you see emotion and logic. Um, you can read all of this on your own. I'm not going to read it all off, but you get the gist with like the mottos. Masters of Seduction for the EF Club. Um, Strength is in the mind and a warm heart for the EL Club. The mind representing the logic and the heart representing the emotion. For the VE Club, you see I can't live in peace. My soul is on fire. So their volition is attached to their emotions and their soul. You see the VL Club, fight and seek, find and don't give up. These are some interesting characters. I don't know if I'd really say they're that. Uh, well, anyway, this should say LVEF over here, but it's well, find, I guess, logic. They're pretty tenacious types. Socrates is an interesting one. Lenin, you don't. Oh shit, that's stupid. Sorry about that. I forgot to stream. All right, I'll start over here. When everyone's on the stream. I'm streaming now. There we go. Okay, as I was. So EF Club, we see that their top ones are their strong placements are emotions and physics, and so their motto, you get the gist from it. You can read the descriptions on your own, but we'll go through the mottos real quick. Masters of Seduction is what the EF Club is supposed to be, because they're associating their physics with emotions, so they're just more important. It's more important to them. That's yeah, Riz, that kind of idea. Then EL Club, this refers to strength in the mind and a warm heart. So this would be referring to mind being the logic placement in the strong, and warm heart being in the emotion placement. And obviously, it says strength right there, so you can get that kind of idea. And then you see the VE Club is well, they're attaching their volition, their will, to their soul, which their soul is linked to emotions, and the will is linked to volition, obviously. That's in the strong. Those are the things that we care about most. Now we look at the VL Club. Fight and seek, find and don't give up. Pretty tenacious. It's well, that's kind of a weird one in my opinion, but if you look at a type like LVFE, this is pretty how do you say, reliable type. VLFE, um, pretty good leaders. You see, like, if everyone knows what Lenin is, um, they're decent people. Socrates, very interesting character, quite the conversationalist. Einstein, so it should be LVEF here, but well, you get the kind of idea. You know. I don't really know if I'd say that Einstein was one for fighting. Likewise, Lao Tzu, the creator of Taoism, not so much either. So FV Club, creators of their fate. So fate kind of being, well, I guess creation would represent the physics and the fate would represent the volition. So they tie them together since they're both strong. So you see Goethe, Napoleon, everyone knows Napoleon, Tsarevsky, um, he's an interesting character. Chekhov. Some of you literature nerds might know Chekhov. So FL Club. Most important things being their logic and their physics. So they're gonna have they're gonna have weak emotion and volition. So that's an important factor to notice. So Aristippus is known for his hedonist philosophy. Plato is known for well, he was very excessive with that logic placement. Um, like you see, everything real is rational, everything rational is real. Like you have two philosophers here, and then you have Berthier, which was Napoleon's chief of staff. He was a bit of a workhorse as a someone serving him. Then you have Epicurus, who actually was more of like he had his own Epicurean philosophy. So you have three philosophers in here in the FL Club, and his philosophy was more of a toned down version of hedonism. So again, there's an interesting story with Aristippus and Plato where they met like I don't know who it was, but it was some god, and the one god gave Aristippus money because of his first physics, and the other one gave Plato some books because of his first logic. And it's just I think that their philosophies are a testament to how much that third volition placement will exaggerate the first placement. Um, but yeah, Berthier is a great person to have on your side, and Epicurus, well, I mean, it's similar. Uh, everything real is rational, everything rational is real. All right, next we see the sextas. This is going to be a matter of the result aspects. Kind of just divides them up based on those paired with results. You can read these on your own. I read them yesterday. There's no mottos here, unfortunately, so I can't just dumb it down. But I suppose these ones are going to be good with talking and discussing, having a dialogue with the volition and logical realms, like ideas and doing things, and also just generally having conversations, that kind of idea. Meanwhile, they're not going to be open to discussing their emotions and their um, materialism. Next, you see like the we having the result aspects being logic and emotion, not up for discussion. Those are going to be the monologue, as I discussed yesterday. And the process aspects being the volition and physics. So they're going to discuss what they can do and the material world. They're going to put more thought into those things. Next, you see here, Factor 3, result aspects, volition and emotion. They're not going to be discussing what they can do or their emotions. They're just going to do it. Um, it's not really up for debate. And then the process aspects being the logic and physics. So they're going to put more thought into dialogue with like logical stuff. Um, and then also they're going to put more thought into their appearance. Next, you see result aspects of for section 4 is logic and volition. Again, not up for debate. They're going to do what they want, and they're not going to really, they don't really, you know, care for, again, they don't care for debating. Although if they're like 1L, they'll have some like strong opinions sometimes. It's not too exaggerated with these two, though. LEFE and LFEV. It's not too bad with them. Process aspects being the physics and emotion. Again, more thought into their emotions, and if it's 2E, then emotions of others. Um, and the physics, again, putting more thought into their appearance. And then here we go. We have result aspects being volition and physics, so they're not up for debate on what they can do, and the material world. They don't really care about their appearance either. Usually won't put much thought into it if it's in the result placement for physics. And then process aspects being logic and emotion. So again, they're going to put a lot of thought into logical arguments and emotions, like the 2L being very good conversationalists, and 3L is going to be nitpicking those discrepancies when they hear them. Meanwhile, the emotions is again, they're generally more conscious of them. Now you see the result aspects for sextas 6 being logic and physics. So they're not going to put much thought into their appearance, and they're not really up for debating or discussing what is true or what isn't in the logical realm. Meanwhile, they're going to put thought into what they can do and to their emotions. So that's kind of a consideration that they'll have. Yeah. So yeah, that should be a pretty good gist. A little more detail than I gave yesterday in some ways. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right. Let's see here. Don't worry about that. Okay. So now we have these ideas here. I suppose we can go over the gist of the dichotomies again. Can't hurt, right? Is that okay with everyone? Okay. So here we see result referring to the first and fourth placement. Most of the time, well, it basically just says you're not going to put thought into it. In terms of aspects of productive functions, it is difficult for him to concentrate on these aspects, and he wants to achieve a stable state. That's the result that they're looking for. So as not to return to these aspects once again. Therefore, the first and fourth functions of the type are result-oriented. For example, 1F and 4F do not like to pay attention to their appearance and the appearance of other people, to their physical needs, to any subtleties in cooking or decorating a home, to ordering a house, etc. So they strive to create such conditions in which their needs will be provided constantly and without unnecessary fuss. So it's not up for debate, and they're not really going to pay attention to it. It's not. There's no discussion there. Meanwhile, you look at process, and they're going to pay a lot more attention to it, put a lot more thought into it. It's more dialogue going on. Aspects of processional functions, on the contrary, are given a significant amount of attention. A person is constantly focused on them and notices the smallest changes in his own and someone else's state in these aspects, in connection with which the second and third functions can be called processional. For example, 2E and 3E constantly track how they look from the outside, what image they form in the eyes of the people around them, and also notice the most insignificant reactions of others, determining the internal emotional state of a person with the same attention they treat their own feelings. So again, a lot more brain power being allocated to those process functions, those process attitudes. Next, we see aggressive. It's going to refer to that first and third, also known as introverted. So, according to the aspects of fundamental functions, a person is directed to his own state, its maintenance or change, in connection with which the first and third functions are introverted and therefore aggressive. Let's say 1V and 3V are aimed at achieving their own goals, realizing their desires, seeking help and support from other people in this. At the same time, they're not interested in motivating someone else to achieve and supporting other people's ambitions. All right, next we look at the passive, which means that second and fourth. Those are going to be extroverted attitudes. Second and fourth functions can be called extrovert or passive because a person, in terms of aspects of these functions, is primarily interested in someone else's state and not his own. So 2L and 4L strive not so much to form their own opinion on any issue, but to support or change someone else's opinion through disputes and discussions or simply agreeing with it. Yeah, yep. Now we look at the strong, which is going to be the first and second. A person can and wants to influence other people on aspects of high functions, but at the same time, he himself is not amenable to influence. That is, he acts as a subject of influence but not as its object. Therefore, the first and second functions are subjective. For example, 1F and 2F have a clear idea of their own and other people's needs in the material world, and they satisfy these needs by imposing them on other people as well. It can be taste in food, ideas about beauty, lifestyle, and so on. Now you look at the weak, would be third and fourth. According to the aspects of low functions, a person cannot influence others, but he himself is influenced by others. That is, he is an object of influence and not a subject. Therefore, we can characterize the third and fourth functions as weak functions. For example, 3V and 4V have difficulty taking responsibility for making decisions. It is easy for them to impose other people's goals by making a decision for them. Yeah, so more impressionable in those regards. Now we've gone over that. Do we have any other questions before we get into the subtypes? All right, quick disclaimer with regards to subtypes. You want to determine your base type before you go for subtypes. So say that you have a type like EVFL. Most importantly, you have to realize your EVFL. You won't just be looking at things and realize, oh, okay, so sometimes I don't show my emotions, or I don't really care about helping people, or something like that. That you don't really want to. There's some traps that you can run into, like, and yes, it's similar with Enneagram subtypes. Like you can run into some of things, like say you have someone who thinks they're either LVEF or LFEV. You don't want to look at the subtypes until you have it nailed down. Like some people might think that they're 4v1 because they read the 4v1 description when they could be 1v4 because like the 4v1's like a stubborn dog that won't go for a walk. Meanwhile, the 1v4 just doesn't want to do anything. It's that same sort of idea. Just you'll see some things as you go down the line, and of course your subtypes will be things that you might how do you say, the particular subtype, like say for example, 1L2 might mistype as 2L. That's how kind of an idea that it has. Or like 3L1 might mistype as 1L. That sort of idea. Now we'll get on with this, I suppose. So see here. It says here on the basic dichotomies of 1L. 1L is a result attitude. It's not paying much attention to the opinion-forming process. Knowledge should be reliable, usable, and not require a winding path to the point. 1L is an aggressive attitude. It forms its own opinion on an issue. God damn it, getting a phone call. All right, sorry about that. So the reason why it says 124 for the subtypes, that's going to be for like 3L, like, it's because it skips the one that's basic to it, because then it wouldn't really be a subtype. It'd just be the basic type. Dog catching, yeah. I ran around a bit. I got a rabbit. Okay. Alright. So 1L's result attitude is not pay much attention to the opinion forming process. Knowledge should be reliable, usable, and not require a winding path to the point. 1L is an aggressive attitude. It forms its own opinion on an issue and doesn't particularly look to others doesn't particularly look to work with others or enter their thought process. Not prone to dialogue, remember that. And 1L is a strong attitude. Therefore, it is difficult for others to convince them of things. They reach their conclusions independently, but they influence others, often without meaning to, since lower logic will be drawn to agree with such a confident opinion. For any 1L, one of the above three properties is accentuated, manifesting to a greater extent than the other two. The exact way this happens is described below, but remember all three of these properties should still be found to type someone as 1L. For example, if you had a 1L focus on the result attitude, they're probably going to be 1L4. If it's focused on the aggressive attitude, 1L3. Or if it's focused on the strong attitude, then it's going to be 1L2. That's why it says strong 1L for 1L2, aggressive 1L for 1L3, and result 1L for 1L4. And just like right here, it says, this is a very important part to remember. You must, all three of them should be somewhat present. All right. 1L2, known as strong 1L. You can see the strong 1L subtype come out in how they express their opinion. Once strong 1L believes they have a viable opinion, the only possible true and correct opinion, they start to convince others of its truth. If it is difficult for strong 1L to accept that someone may genuinely disagree with them, or that someone may truly feel that they don't have enough understanding to make a decision. As a result of this, strong 1L does not just share their opinion, they defeat the opinions of others. They will listen to the other person's arguments so they can come up with rebuttals. This tendency toward persuasion makes strong 1L possible to confuse for 2L, but 2L genuinely is interested in discussion and in others' opinions. When 2L makes arguments, it is skillfully on the fly. Strong 1L is interested in the correct opinion, though theirs, and it wants the supremacy of their opinion established as quickly as possible. Thus, their style of argument is not so free-flowing. They refer to authoritative sources, well-known facts, and practical observations, rather than soliciting input or asking genuine questions. Strong 1L usually comes off as more active and energetic than the other two subtypes. Whew. All right. Any question? Anyone jump in if you ever have any questions here. All right. 1L3, also known as aggressive 1L. A 1L with aggressive subtype is quite disinclined to accept someone else's opinion, even if quite authoritative. How can you get aggressive 1L to agree with you? It is not easy. You must explain exactly how you arrived at all your conclusions and where your information came from. Then they will decide for themselves whether to believe you. This can look like 3L, especially aggressive 3L. Still, there are differences. 3L desires dialogues where they can consider others' arguments. 3L doubts their own opinion, and this leads to new discussions. But aggressive 1L will come to new conclusions alone. Note that alone factor. That's where the monologue comes in. If you have proved your point to aggressive 1L, they will go and reflect on it. If they decided to believe in you, congratulations. Your new knowledge has been marked as truth and will not be doubted, but don't expect it to be easy. This could be Strax right here, just for a side note. 1L4, result 1L. A 1L with result subtype wants to understand something once and for all. Usually their explanations seem brief/low effort. A discussion on a topic will often seem more like a Q&A session with an expert. If result 1L does not know something, they will defer to expert opinion just fine. Discussing a concept with result 1L is difficult. Either they will straightforwardly share everything they know, or else say something like, I don't know. I don't understand this at all. Go ask someone else. It sometimes seems like result 1L is uninterested in thinking, which makes them look like a 4L, but 4L is not so concerned with about matters of correctness. Result 1L still takes it very seriously. Even if a source is very authoritative, result 1L still wants to digest it on their own terms. They will check everything themselves. If their check reveals incorrectness, the source will be discarded. Result 1L usually comes off as more calm and straightforward than the other two subtypes. Any questions?
What is this whole thing called again? I think last time it was different from socionics. It's like this different system.
Yeah, it's Psychosophy.
Ah, okay. Psychosophy. I'm still getting used to that board. It's cool.
Okay. I'm not sure what you're asking for there, Wraith. Like, you want to see clear. You ask, can we see through, clearly through these? Oh, it's not a question, I guess. Okay. Yeah, that's correct with what you're saying, though. It's kind of the idea of the subtypes. Now, we see 2L subtypes. Um, 2L is a process attitude. They devote frequent attitude to the formation of their own and others' views. They love to exchange opinions, discuss various topics, maybe debate. 2L is a passive attitude. Others' opinions are more interesting than their own. They may not really know their opinion on a particular topic, and even if they do, they can change their view quickly, or view easily. 2L is a strong attitude. They feel empowered to engage logically whenever they want. If 2L does not wish to be convinced, they will not be. They will find new arguments and present new information that miraculously supports their point. They enjoy convincing others, even more so if their interlocutor seems fully engaged in the details and subtleties. These three properties form the heart of how 2L is portrayed, but not all 2Ls act the same. Some of this can be explained by subtypes. Again, that same thing. So, process is going to refer to 2L3, passive is going to refer to 2L4, and strong is going to refer to 2L1. So we see 2L1 being strong 2L. Strong 2L is confident in their opinions and difficult to convince. They are great at teaching and explaining. They will give examples and properly control the pace. They are also good writers of articles, books, and papers. They will have an interesting and layered argument where concepts form together in a pleasing way. Strong 2L doesn't usually like interacting with others as equals in logical discussions. Their natural default is to see themselves as teacher and the person they're talking to as student. This naturally leads to being easily mistaken for 1L. Still, strong 2L makes more mental space for others' point of view. If strong 2L thinks someone is wrong, they feel obligated to actually convince the other person, to not just leave them with delusions. 1L, in comparison, would just think, what does it matter who has what opinion? I know mine is correct, but obviously you can't convince everyone. Also, strong 2L will cover more ground in their reasoning, leading to longer arguments. The reason for this is they want to make it easy for the other person to change their mind internally. They want to put in the necessary bells and whistles to seem credible, referring to something well known, giving their own resume, noting when important figures agree with them. Strong 2L is the most stubborn of the subtypes. Next, we see process 2L or 2L3. Process 2L loves discussions, even aimless ones, even if their conversation partner seems kind of apathetic and wants the conversation to end. This happens often enough with result logic. It is hard to turn off the thirst for explanations. Process 2L is willing to discuss or question almost anything. What they're less willing to do is be silent. It's painful if a person does not seem to listen to their thoughts and reasoning. They tend to be verbose, spending hours rambling about whatever's in their head, improvising to stay relevant to the thread of conversation. Process 2L usually likes public speaking. It's a way to share the thoughts that bounce around their head all day, every day. Similarly, if Process 2L can write, they may get graphomania. They can't stop. Even with a negative reaction, they can't stop. Process 2L may look like 3L because they are skeptical of conventional wisdom and often challenge it, and also tend to challenge things others put forth authoritatively. Unlike 3L, Process 2L is not so afraid of being wrong and will not lose confidence in their point just because someone disagrees. Instead, the objector will usually either be seen as stubborn or unintelligent. This is the most talkative subtype. Now we see 2L4, passive 2L. Passive 2L wants people to understand each other. They can act as a translator, helping people find common ground by explaining what they really meant. Unlike the other subtypes, passive 2L does not insist on their own opinions. They will not debate unless it feels constructive. They admit the existence of different points of view. Usually they do not bother to prove their case, but if they must, they will do it kindly and carefully. This tendency toward hiding their opinions makes passive 2L seem like 4L, but they can be distinguished. Passive 2L is more interested in people's opinions and will be more likely to prompt discussion and expression of viewpoints. Also, passive 2L is still a process attitude. If you ask them to explain something, they will try their best and probably enjoy it, where 4L finds this boring. They want something tied up neatly, not something requiring analysis and reflection. Passive 2L is a subtype that is most likely to quote and cite others. Any questions? All right, 3L subtypes. We see that it's 3L is a process attitude. It spends much time in reflection and discussion, wants to share opinions with others, and listens to others' point of view. Look at 3L as an aggressive attitude. Its primary aim is to make a correct judgment that corresponds to reality. Others' explanations serve this end. It does not matter as much if they convince others that they are correct, more that they are confident in being right internally. 3L is a weak attitude. It does not often reach a place of conviction and becomes easily thrown into doubt. They are torn between a desire for benevolent help with their reasoning and a fear that they will be considered stupid or incompetent. Therefore, they are wary of freely expressing their thoughts. These three properties lead to three 3L subtypes. So the process being 3L2, the aggressive being 3L1, and the weak being 3L4. You see the aggressive here. Aggressive 3L, 3L1. Aggressive 3L aims to form their own opinion that accurately reflects reality. If aggressive 3L is unsure if they have attained objectivity, then they are in no hurry to share what they know. Better to listen to others and gradually start to draw conclusions. Taking into account all points of view gives the most complete picture. This self-focus and unwillingness to share can make aggressive 3L look like 1L. To distinguish, consider whether they formed their opinions independently or with others' help. That's a very important factor to look at. 3L is happy when others give helpful explanations because they can start to drown in their own mental constructions. They'll be especially pleased if you don't just share a conclusion, but the whole chain of reasoning that got you there. 1L, in comparison, will care more about the views of respected authorities and rigorous studies than the views of you, the person talking to them, even if you are being very helpful and what you're saying sounds plausible. A similarity that aggressive 3L does have with 1L compared to the other 3L subtypes, they are the most restrained and quiet. Next, we see 3L2, Process 3L. Process 3L prefers to gain knowledge through conversation. They enjoy discussions. Even if they don't participate, they like being in the room. But usually they do participate. They're less afraid of looking incompetent than the other subtypes. So they're more talkative and willing to defend their views. If someone else's arguments are convincing, it's not hard to admit they're wrong. Process 3L enjoys sharing their knowledge and their vision, even if it can seem unstructured. They have a broad outlook and enjoy learning. What's the difference between Process 3L and 2L? 3L is still an aggressive attitude. 3L motivation for entering a discussion is to develop its own understanding. 2L is less looking to form its own opinions, more interested in convincing, giving arguments, explaining. If arguments prove a 3L wrong, they will doubt and reflect. If arguments prove a 2L wrong, they will reflexively come up with other arguments. But still, Process 3L subtype is certainly the least sensitive to criticism and the most inquisitive. Next, we see 3L4, or weak 3L. Compared to other 3L subtypes, weak 3L is more accepting of others' influence in discussions and formation of views. If weak 3L's conversation partner has obvious competence and proficiency, weak 3L is inclined to agree with them, even if an explanation is short. Later, weak 3L will develop doubts again. Then they will have another conversation with someone knowledgeable, and the doubt will disappear. What happens when several high logic people prove contradictory points convincingly? This is alarming. Weak 3L does not want to be burdened with the responsibility of deciding which point is correct, to carry around this doubt. Yes, this sounds like 4L, but 4L is not going to change their minds as much because they are not as interested in getting to the heart of a problem. When 4L does change their minds, it is not so much of a problem to discard the old thoughts. But any 3L, even weak 3L, must understand the entire phenomenon, whatever it takes, which gives them a feeling of uncertainty and inferiority. So paradoxically, weak 3L is both the most flexible of the subtypes and the most insecure. All right. 4L subtypes. 4L is a result attitude. It is not interested in how you formed your opinions. It wants to extract the knowledge and apply it. Thus, 4L does not want to explain their viewpoints, preferring authoritative opinions and direct observation to involved reasoning. 4L is a passive attitude. It does not need to promote its own opinions, or sometimes even to have one. Others' thoughts and knowledge are also viewed as interesting. Thus, 4L often succumbs to others' opinions, like a sponge, absorbing everything. It's also a weak attitude. Which one of these, result passive weak, comes out most strongly determines subtype. And of course, result's going to be 4L1, passive 4L2, and weak 4L3. So 4L1, known as result 4L, a good opinion is one that does not need to be rethought. They're uncomplicated in this area. They do not become involved in disputes and discussions. Either they know or they don't know, and that's that. Result 4L does not wish to make assumptions. They listen to others' thoughts, which they can either reject or accept as fact. If result 4L views a person as an authority, and or the thought is expressed briefly and confidently, the second outcome becomes far more likely. Meaning that they'll accept it. And if not, convincing result 4L is really tough. If you give good reasoning, it basically doesn't even matter. They won't be listening too closely. In this way, they resemble 1L, but 1L does genuinely have an opinion which they thought about carefully and can express confidently, whereas a 4L's opinions are formed mostly by the views of others. If you need to convince result 4L of something, don't start prompting them to independent thoughts. Instead, say your point with confidence, or mention a good source if they won't find you personally credible. This will work better. Conveying an idea to result 4L that does not fit into their current understanding can be challenging, but the flip side is that success is lasting. Result 4L has the most stable worldview of any of the subtypes. Next, we see 4L2, or passive 4L. Passive 4L is actively interested in others' opinions. They're open to new knowledge and do not prevent others' expression of viewpoints. You will often hear passive 4L say things like, "What do you think about X?" or "He said Y. Do you agree?" They will also get involved in such discussions themselves. This gives them more of a 2L flavor. The difference is that 2L does not want to merely form an opinion, but rather to discuss it, unpack how another person got to their conclusions, engage in reflection together, play with evidence. But passive 4L is interested in others' opinions because they're interested in reliable knowledge. If several experts agree, that is notable, regardless of how they got there. To passive 4L, proving a viewpoint's correctness is about where did this come from. Thoughts beyond this are fundamentally uninteresting. Passive 4L has a model of the world where the necessary knowledge is already sitting there and it just needs to be found. Thus, if presenting their own opinion, they frame it as an unconditional fact that everyone should know. You will convince them otherwise only if you are clearly more competent or have more credible sources. Compared to the other subtypes, passive 4L is more curious and inclined to dialogue. Last, we see 4L3, known as weak 4L. The weak 4L subtype is the easiest to persuade. You don't even need an argument. A rumor is enough to shake their confidence. They are often very doubtful, like a 3L, but they are not like a 3L in all ways. 3L wants full proof, detail to be asked what they themselves think. A certain level of doubt is viewed as natural, even good. But a weak 4L is not much worried about this area. They are not bothered by a possible lack of knowledge. They do not wish to waste too much time reflecting. If an explanation sounds good enough, they'll take it in. Their requirements are not prohibitively high, so there is a wider range of acceptable authorities than the other 4L subtypes. Compared to the other subtypes, weak 4L is the most agreeable and trusting. Any questions?
I have one if you don't mind.
I encourage it.
There was someone earlier in chat that theorized ENTP, what their lettering would be in this system, and or ILE. So what do you think it would be?
Yeah, they tend to be 2L. That's
2L.
almost unavoidable for
And
them.
what would their subtypes be that can go with that?
Well, the
If you just went
subtype's
over
largely
subtypes.
irrelevant. The subtype's going to vary by individual. If you want to, really talk about those correlations, then it's not really related to subtypes at all. But the subtype is
Okay.
more, once you get that base type down, it's tailoring it to the individual because there's a lot of individual variety in people.
Okay, well that's another question related to that then, since we were on subtypes. Say you know your 2L, how do you find your subtype? This has been talking about all of them, at least from my limited perspective on it. How do you find it? Do you get typed, or do you read through all of this? What's the method?
I don't think that a typist is really good at finding the subtypes because of how personal they are. I'd say a typist is better at finding the base type, and then after that, you nail down the subtypes yourself because it's more detailed and kind of internal. What you want to do
Okay,
is though
well
is you
thank
want to
you.
read the descriptions here, and then you can nail it down yourself. Now, as far as potential techniques for self-development for a 4L, I suppose if we're to entertain how they think, then perhaps having some experts to go to, people that you trust on various topics, might be a reliable idea.
Okay, well cool. Are there specific servers for this Psychosophy, or is it like lumped in with your server as well?
There's not a whole lot of Psychosophy servers out there. They're pretty insignificant if there are any.
So is this like a pretty new system?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Anything else? I imagine that the subtypes can change over time. As said yesterday, the creator said that the base types themselves can change over time. So I don't see why the subtypes wouldn't be able to change over time. It certainly seems more likely, but I don't have a definitive answer there. All right. Yeah, the creator, I believe, was Alexander Afanasyev, however you spell that or pronounce it. All right, I guess we'll get into volition here. It's a very important factor to look at. 1V subtypes. 1V is a result attitude. So it doesn't keep the desire forming process in its sphere of attention. In 1V's eyes, desire appears ready-made, where it can be realized or suppressed, and these desires are not changed much by interactions with strangers. 1V is an aggressive attitude focused on its own desires and their realization, sometimes failing to realize that others have their own aspirations that don't fit into 1V's own framing. And 1V is a strong attitude, comfortable influencing others in this aspect, whether by imposing decisions on others or merely confidently following their own path and not easily deviating from it. So the result attitude is going to be the 1V4, the aggressive 1V3, and the strong 1v2. As usual, there are three subtypes right here. We see here. 1v2 being strong 1v. Strong 1v seeks to influence the goals and desires of others. The other subtypes mostly follow their own path and do not impose it, but strong 1v has trouble remaining aloof in this way. They are often found in a common cause, guiding others and giving them assignments. If they have no team to do this with, they may do this in their household or with their friend group. It's sort of like 2V, motivating and inspiring the people around them. But 2V is actually focused on the desires of others. They want the other to understand their own aspirations and use them as a guide. But strong 1V will set the goal by themselves and naturally lead others in that direction, not quite pausing to think about what others' own goals actually are. Compared to the other subtypes, they really enjoy responsibility and wish to extend their activities past mastery of the self into mastery of the environment. This is going to be pretty good leader type. Very good leaders. Quite natural, I'd say. And it's kind of like you're going to want to follow them. To be fair, this can be said about most of them, but this one in particular, they'll like kind of improve you. Now you see 1v3, known as aggressive 1v. Aggressive 1v tends to act like their current road to self-realization is the one true path, and can be disdainful towards those goals lie outside of it. They tend to attract a group of followers that end up absorbing aggressive 1B's aspirations more than other 1V subtypes. Aggressive 1V pays attention to the expectations of society and compares themselves to others, which can sometimes give them a 3V flavor. But you can find the difference in the other dichotomies. Aggressive 1V does not need others' help to make decisions or find motivation on the way. For 3V, their confidence and momentum very much depend on whether they are provided this. Aggressive 1V is the most self-confident and ambitious. So they're not really interested in bettering those people around them, but they will join them. Now we see 1V4, known as result 1V. This is going to be kind of, I guess you could say, stubborn in a way. They don't want to do anything, and you're not going to change their mind. But we'll go into more detail here. The result 1B subtype shows a visible indifference to goal setting and self-actualization. They may consider themselves lazy and unable to get what they want. External motivation doesn't really matter to them at all if they are without internal incentive. The way result 1B usually works that they want to achieve the whole thing at once rather than spending much time and effort to achieve the goal. This can give them an air of uncertainty, like they're not really a leader, which can make them look like 4V, especially 4V result. To distinguish them, notice the following. First, you can't really impose your will on 1V result, especially on anything that really matters, where 4V can usually be persuaded, especially if they know that you will leave them alone if they do what you want. Secondly, 1V result does not blame anyone but themselves for their failures. In their worldview, everyone is in charge of their own life. If you complain about fate, they will not be sympathetic, whereas 4V will often refer to annoying circumstances or others' mistakes, preventing achievement. Still, 1V result is the least purposeful subtype. Any questions on 1V subtypes?
I have a question. I don't know if it relates to this, but what does -3 mean? Is that a subtype?
No, the -3, that just says 1V-3. It's not really a minus, it's just, that's telling you the subtype after the dash, the hyphen.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right. Okay. 2V subtypes. 2V is a process attitude. It will not bypass the goal setting process. It's not enough to have ready-made instructions or outlined plans. 2V finds it important to coordinate with both their own and others' desires. 2V is a passive attitude. They pay at least as much attention to others' desires and achievements as their own. Sometimes it may seem to others and to 2V themselves that they do not have their own aspirations at all. It is easier for 2V to find what they want when they discuss plans with others. 2V is a strong attitude. They do not sacrifice their own desires to someone more in command. Instead, they will try to exert influence themselves to either actively support the proposed course of action or to actively work against it. Which of these properties comes out most determines subtype? Now we see 2V1, strong 2V. 2V1, well, strong 2V is purposeful. They wish not only to discuss the decision, but to persuade the other person to act. Such a 2V can easily step into the role of leader, to cut through the inertia. Whether through polite persuasion or outright provocation, they will get others to participate. Sometimes it seems like they are not actually interested in knowing what others want, which makes them look 1V-ish. But 1V actuate um, wants to actuate its own desires immediately, which naturally leads to highs and lows of activity. For strong 2V, getting others to act is almost a form of entertainment, which makes them more persistent. It does not drain them as much to involve others. You will also hear strong 2Vs say things like, I'm not doing this for my own good. You want this, and you're just sitting here. This makes strong 2V seem intrusive, but this sort of pressure is very useful. It's what any team can use if it wants to build momentum. This is the most insistent 2V subtype. Next, we see 2V3, known as Process 2V. Process 2V is quite democratic, a natural opponent of any restrictions and constraints. In their opinion, nearly any proposal can and should be considered. Process 2V subtype spends a lot of time and attention weighing each decision, figuring out whether they or someone else really wants to carry out a plan. If a decision has already been made, they are always willing to go back and reconsider it. So maybe you agreed with them yesterday about who will do the work in joint project, and today they propose something else. Ask again if you are satisfied with the direction, reflect on whether they really want to do it. This can make them look like 3V, but 3V really needs discussion of plans to gather enough motivation and confidence in their desires, whereas Process 2V doesn't need to be recharged in this way, it just wants to weigh the pros and cons. Process 2V is the most agreeable 2V type and the hardest to discern the motives of. Next we see 2V4, known as passive 2V. Passive 2V is quite attentive to others' intentions. Before making a decision, they will think about what others want. They will listen to another's plans for a long time and carefully, and usually genuinely support them. Outright refusal is hard for passive 2V. If passive 2V is firmly opposed to a goal, they will usually try to remove themselves from the situation to avoid hurting anyone. This looks like 4V, but 4V becomes tired quickly of messing up plans. The process of changing them. They are more inclined to help at the later implementation stage than the earlier what and why stage. 4V also will yield to pressure much of the time. Passive 2V is not like this. They listen to others in order to actively be involved with the creation of the goal. And if you look closely, they are still more guide than follower. They do always leave their partner a choice, but passive 2V will be generating the options for that choice themselves. They are like an advisor, prompting accurately and carefully, while leaving the right to make a decision. Of all the 2V subtypes, passive 2V is the most delicate and attentive in conversation. Any questions? Okay. 3V subtypes. 3V is a process attitude. It keeps the process of forming and realizing goals in a sphere of
Hold on a
attention.
second. I'm sorry, curator. Okay, yeah, I'm thinking about like the difference between process and passive. Um,
Is there a
2V.
question?
Yeah. How? Okay, what does it look like? Like the difference. Like, how would you be able to tell whether someone is process or passive? Like I know you explained it, but I'm just trying to get an image here in my brain of what it might look like. Is there anything else you might be able to add? Like I don't know, like what their body language is like. I'm trying to formulate it, but
Yeah,
I know I'm not
I
giving you
don't
a
know
lot to
about
work with
that,
here.
but this is something that you're gonna have to look at, kind of introspect on. Like you have to
Okay.
think about, so like the 2v3, for example, it's got to think about, do people know your motives? Maybe they assume them, and maybe it's just, you know,
Oh no. Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, people don't know my motives generally. Okay, that answers that.
meanwhile,
Thank
you
you.
can look at like 2v4, and it's going to be more adaptive of others' motives, but it's still like leading them in those areas.
Mm, okay, yeah, I think I'm processing. Thank you.
All right. 3V subtypes. 3V is a process attitude. It keeps the process of forming and realizing goals in a sphere of attention. 3V thinks and talks about what they want, how they're going to do it, and whether it's worth it or not. They are responsive to others' input in this area and appreciate the right sort of feedback. 3V is an aggressive attitude. It is oriented towards achieving its own ambitions, sometimes not noticing that others have desires too. 3V is a weak attitude. It is subject to influence from outside, even if it doesn't want to be. 3V tends to attach importance to public opinion. They may do a lot to get a positive response, or do a lot to avoid being noticed to avoid a negative one. One of these properties usually comes out more clearly than the other two, giving us subtypes. 3V1, known as aggressive 3V. Aggressive 3V subtype is the most ambitious. They want to feel good about their own worth and to prove this to others. Often aggressive 3V sets big goals and does not shy away from telling others about them. They want attention focused on them and on their activities. They tend to draw attention and strong opinions from others anywhere they go. So from the outside, they look self-confident and independently successful. 1V-ish. What's the difference? Aggressive 3V is more likely to take the opinions of others seriously, to fight back, and to declare that the need for this is an inevitable part of life. On the other hand, 1V does not believe that it is possible for external circumstances to restrict their fundamental internal freedom of action. So they do what they see fit, not aiming to prove anything. This mindset is foreign to aggressive 3V. Three V two, known as Process 3V. Process 3V is more harmonious than the other 3Vs, being close in spirit to 2V. They are interested in the common cause. They appreciate support and know how to provide it. They are not too proud to take criticism. They love to discuss their desires, actions, and plans for the future, and view achieving goals as a creative and dynamic process. If they are on a team, Process 3V can achieve a lot. Unlike 2V, Process 3V is primarily concerned with their own aspirations, viewing this interaction with others as a way to make progress there. Also, Process 3V suffers from self-doubt and lack of motivation to stay on the path. They need some benevolent external influence, where 2V can provide this on their own. Lastly, we see 3V4, known as Weak 3V. Weak 3V is very afraid of others' judgments, their harsh words and scolding looks. The desire to avoid this usually exceeds the desire to get what they want. Weak 3V is usually secretive, keeping to themselves and secretly resentful to others who are not like this. They have trouble accepting help, both because they generally distrust people and because they don't feel they're worthy of receiving it. Weak 3V often considers themselves insignificant, miserable, incapable of anything, and these thoughts can overwhelm them, suppressing their ability to act. Externally, they usually look like they are agreeable and go with the flow, like a 4V, but 4V has a tolerant attitude towards themselves and an accepting attitude towards others. Weak 3V is often at their best in hierarchical structure, where they're more powerful people to obey, and less powerful people who provide a sanctioned ground for self-assertion. Even if effective there, weak 3V feels that they have not realized their true ambitions out in the big world, and may take this out on anyone depending on them. This is the most closed-off 3V subtype. Any questions? All right, on to 4V. 4V is a result attitude. It usually doesn't pay much attention to how they and others form their intentions, instead seeing desires as a sort of objective reality. What is to be done? Either you proceed with your agenda, or you abandon it for that of another. 4V is a passive attitude. It supports the aspirations of others more than fixating on their own, let alone involving others in their own agenda. If you can infect 4V with your own goals organically, they can perform miracles of perseverance helping you. 4V is a weak attitude, is easily influenced, and thus a 4V, if not careful, may suffer from adopting others' goals that are alien to their own nature. Additionally, they will not usually impose their own decisions, believing this a personal and private matter. This leads to 3 corresponding subtypes. 4v1, known as result 4v. If result 4v's desires conflict with those of another, this is a difficult situation. They will not usually enter into dialogue or seek compromise. Usually result 4v will just follow their own desires and do whatever enters their head instead. This is a 1v-ish tendency, but unlike 1v, result 4v naturally avoids responsibility and struggles to keep promises, since it is difficult for them to do anything they do not want to do. It is also notable that result 4v can be influenced by others, which can result in a rebellious tone. Leave me alone, I don't want to do it. 1v is the same situation. In the same situation would remain calm, basically ignore the expectation, and continue on with their own agenda. Result 4v is the least collaborative of the subtypes. Next we see 4v2, known as passive 4v. Passive 4v is distinguished by an interest in others' desires and goals, and an involvement in their implementation. The active nature of this support, as well as a tendency toward compromise, gives them a 2v flavor. There are two main differences. First, passive 4v will tend to compromise their own interests and agenda, which is not characteristic of 2v. Second, they feel out of place in the process of setting goals and defining what is wanted in the first place, preferring to specialize in the later step of more straightforward achievement. Constant searching and doubting on another's part, cough 3v, depletes passive 4v, since it often feels like a senseless waste of effort. 2v finds the same situation an excellent opportunity to display their creative potential. Passive 4v is the most hardworking subtype, the most inclined to join others in projects. 4v3, known as weak 4v. Weak 4v is quite susceptible to others' influence in the area of desires and goals. They usually go with the flow, dreading to make decisions on their own, folding to others. Weak 4v is usually too insecure to want to achieve anything that substantial. They lack ambition in work and relationships alike. They are docile and tend to rely on their partner, not because they trust their partner, but because thinking about their own development feels odd, and they seek out something to replace that feeling with. Their low self-esteem and tendency towards self-doubt can make them look 3v-ish, but unlike 3v, weak 4v isn't so resentment-prone. They are not angry at those who are more successful and do not suffer for not having realized ambitions as large as they'd like. Weak 4v's lack of initiative and inclination to obedience is not a sneaky mask, it is a genuine internal state. This is the most sluggish of the 4v's. Any questions? Alright, on to physics. 1F subtypes. 1F is a result attitude. It is not inclined to constant physical activity, not because it lacks the strength for this, but because it only pays so much attention to the body and the material world. There are a set of needs that must be satisfied. Maybe eat good food, have personal space, dress well, but after that attention shifts to process attitudes. 1F is an aggressive attitude. Their own physical needs come first. This gives them a possessive nature and unstable fluctuations between greed and generosity. 1F is a strong attitude. It imposes its way of interacting with the material world on others. Everyday habits, tastes, and preferences. The extent to which these qualities are expressed determines the three subtypes. First, we see 1F2, known as strong 1F. Strong 1F has the most impact on people around them in the realm of physics, as well as the most impact in the material world as a whole. They are highly active, decorating, exercising, doing repairs, making things with their own hands. They don't just enjoy eating, but also cooking. They don't just enjoy nice outfits, but also shopping. Strong 1F likes to look at other people, to touch them, to give them lifestyle/appearance advice. This behavior is similar to 2F, but strong 1F sees other people as objects designed to satisfy their own needs, just in the material sphere, I mean. While 2F really wants to locate others' true physical needs, to help the other person express these needs, to liberate the person in a sense. Also, strong 1F's activities tend to proceed in quickly ending bursts, where 2F tends to more of a stable rhythm since their attention never really leaves the material world. Strong 1F is the most active and self-confident subtype. 1F3, known as aggressive 1F. Aggressive 1F has high demands for their body, health, appearance, material status, and living area. These needs are more pronounced than the other 1F subtypes, and if not met, will lead to severe discomfort and anxiety. This capriciousness and fastidiousness, whatever those means, makes them look like 3F, but aggressive 1F is self-sufficient in the physical world and desires no outside interference. Advice on how to dress better, how to eat right, how to arrange an apartment, etc. 3F, for all their squeamishness, is still looking for this sort of feedback. 3F wants people to find a tailored approach to them, while aggressive 1F simply wants to not to be interfered with. Aggressive 1F is the most demanding 1F subtype. Lastly, we see 1F forward, and as result 1F. Result 1F is usually indifferent to their appearance and their environment. They are too lazy to maintain order, take care of their body, or cook well. Thus, they either learn to minimize their needs or rely on the services of others, for example, by ordering takeout food. Result 1F does not enjoy being active, playing sports, or moving around. A passive lifestyle is much more suitable for them. Thus, they can be mistaken for 4F. But 4F easily adapts to others' habits and tastes, while result 1F still wants what it wants. They get what they desire, just not in energy-intensive ways, and covering too much ground. But if you get in the way of result 1F's habits and tastes, they will do everything they can to push back and stop this. Any questions on 1F subtypes? Okay. 2F subtypes. 2F is a process attitude. 2F notices small details of its own and others' physical state, seeks to interact with this and modify it. This makes 2F very mobile, interested in issues of appearance, health, personal care, exercise, and the outdoors. 2F is a passive attitude. It finds the physical needs of others worth noting, helps them to relax and get in touch with their body. 2F is a strong attitude. It is confident in its evaluations and desires influence. 2F knows how to evaluate their own and others' appearance, how to eat right and have a healthy lifestyle, how to interact with the material world. They share these ideas with others, trying to change their lives for the better. Some of these properties will stand out more than others in risk typing areas. Thus, we should discuss what different subtypes look like. We see 2F1, strong 2F. Strong 2F seeks to influence others in their daily life, specifically how others interact with the material world. They can be a talent and coach, master craftsperson, stylist, The main thing is that their activities involve communication with others about their concrete direction. Strong 2F is a teacher and a mentor who successfully pushes others to realize themselves in the world of physics. You can hear phrases from them like, you should wear more light colors, it really suits you. You should go on this diet, clean your room. How can you live in this mess? Strong 2F is persistent in their recommendations because they are convinced that they are making others' lives better. This imposition of a certain way of life, the calls for change and improvement, makes strong 2F look like 1F, but 1F is focused on their own needs and simply makes others adapt their tastes as necessary. Strong 2F is actually focused on others, wanting to change the person's relationship to their body and to physical space, and successes in this domain bring strong 2F genuine pleasure. Strong 2F is the most persistent subtype. Next, we have 2F3, known as Process 2F. Process 2F strives for physical interaction with other people and the world. They have difficulty sitting still. They constantly want to move to feel the progress of their body. They are usually very into exercise, dance, and/or general fitness/health. Process 2F also just has a strong desire for bodily contact with others. They may give a massage, straighten clothes, comb hair, hug, basically touch people in every possible way. There are plenty of opportunities to process 2F to realize itself in everyday life. They may create objects, sow, grow plants, take care of animals, and take care of children. This abundance is common to 2F and 3F. Unlike 3F, process 2F feels confident and feels free in this area, and it is not overly weighed down by their own needs, focusing instead on liberating others. Process 2F is the most mobile and restless subtype. Lastly, we have 2F4, known as passive 2F. Passive 2F is the most tolerant of others' habits and preferences in the material world. They will not impose a healthy lifestyle, self-care, or a certain style of clothing, but rather help the other person satisfy their own needs in the optimal way. For example, if a loved one is hungry, passive 2F will be creative in preparing the dish so it brings as much pleasure as possible. If someone wants to go for a walk or play a quick game of basketball, they will gladly join. Passive 2F is not so critical of how the other person moves, how they look, or what they eat in their home. Order is not a requirement. They will give advice on appearance, health, and housekeeping. These recommendations are friendly and unobtrusive. Since they are so adaptable, they can be mistaken for 4F, but passive 2F is active, in high spirits, in touch with their body, self-actualizing via the physical sphere, rather than simply interacting with it as needed. Passive 2F will take responsibility for their own physical needs and those of others, make sure they are satisfied, and put a lot of thought into doing this in the best way. Passive 2F is the most unobtrusive subtype. Any questions on 2F subtypes? And just any questions in general, rather. All right, on to 3F subtypes. 3F is a process attitude. It has a constant focus on physical needs and satisfaction. This means they notice many subtleties in interaction with the material world. 3F is an aggressive attitude, guided primarily by their own state. They pay attention to their own body, health, appearance, and home, seeking to bring them to an ideal. 3F is a weak attitude. It helps with its physics-related needs. 3F lacks confidence in its influence on it needs help with its physics-related needs. 3F lacks confidence in its influence on the material world. These are the three concepts 3F consists of, which forms three subtypes. 3F1, known as aggressive 3F, Aggressive 3F is preoccupied with their own needs. They don't easily give up their everyday habits or make compromises. Aggressive 3F understands better than you what they should wear, what diet to follow, cosmetics, etc. As with process 3F, aggressive 3F likes to explore all sorts of sources to find new recipes, aesthetics, beautiful objects, and ideas for their living space. Unlike process 3F, though, they are not so interested in sharing their research and rediscussing it. It is enough for aggressive 3F that they create their own little world in which they can be comfortable. This confidence and steadfastness can be confused with 1F, but aggressive 3F is attuned to many little things in the physical world, shows constant physical activity, tirelessly aims to self-improvement and increased skills in physics-related areas, which is not usually 1F's way of being. Aggressive 3F is the most self-sufficient 3F subtype. 3F2, known as process 3F, is distinguished by high activity and mobility, as well as an intense interest in the topics of health, exercise, grooming, household projects, cooking, etc. They can talk about this for hours, give advice, collect interesting information for future reference. Dealing with process 3F can sometimes be unpleasant. For example, they constantly discuss the clothes and figure of people around them, or give obsessive advice like, be sure to add celery to this dish, or you will freeze in that hat, wear something warmer. Therefore, it can be difficult to distinguish between process 3F and 2F. They are both active in this area, especially when others are involved, but process 3F is insecure and easily influenced. Even if they are dumping a ton of advice on you, at some level they are looking for something reliable in return. This comes out as questions. Does this shirt suit me? Is the color of the ceiling matching the color of the walls? Etc. 2F solves these questions perfectly, while without outside help. Process 3F will feel a persistent unease and sense of needing confirmation. Process 3F is the most sociable subtype. Lastly, we have 3F4, known as weak 3F, which is the most susceptible 3F subtype to outside influences. They often need help with housekeeping, working on their body, choosing clothes. They lack the knowledge and confidence to handle these issues on their own. To limit the scope of effort, weak 3F often resorts to a sort of asceticism, often unconsciously. They throw away unnecessary things so as not to take care of them. They cook with the simplest recipes to avoid mistakes. They do not have pets because the pets will have needs. This makes weak 3F look like 4F because 4F is also unpretentious, often not bothering much with the physical sphere at all, but weak 3F does still want to make something of themselves in this area. Despite all their difficulties, with the right help and support, they will flourish. For example, weak 3F may cook wonderful dishes if someone else does the dirty work, cleaning, cutting, washing food, or equip the apartment if helped with arranging furniture, painting walls, or installing equipment. Weak 3F is the most dependent subtype on both people and circumstances, but in the right collaborative setting, they can move mountains. Any questions? All right. These subtypes are not in the descriptions on this server. I should probably add that at some point. Lastly, we see the 4F subtypes. 4F is a result attitude, does not pay much attention to its physical needs or the material world as a whole. 4F does not really bother to focus much on clothes, food, or home decor, nor do they usually enjoy physical activity much. 4F is a passive attitude. Other people's needs and preferences in the physical world seem at least as interesting as their own. One way this usually plays out is that 4F self-esteem does not depend much on their financial situation. This is not close to their core. 4F is a weak attitude, inclined to give in to outside influences, compromises on its real-world needs. On one hand, these people are unpretentious in everyday life, and it is easy to get along with them. On the other hand, they lack the assertiveness to defend their territory when necessary. One of these properties is usually more noticeable than the others, hence subtypes. Here we see 4F1, known as result 4F. Result 4F is particularly interested in stability. They are stable in their everyday habits, replace their clothes rarely, take a straightforward approach to household chores. This doesn't mean it's that easy to get along with Result 4F, as they will stubbornly defend their usual way of life. Thus, they can look like 1F, especially Result 1F, but 1F is going to more intentionally focus on their physical needs rather than taking influence from others. 1F sets the way of life, others adapt. Whereas Result 4F is more of a follower here and quite suggestible. The habits they defend are often habits that have been imposed on them at an earlier time, for example, in childhood. They did not reassess much. If they can continue the habit, they will. If not, oh well. There are other more pressing things to deal with, the higher attitudes. Result 4F is the most conservative subtype. 4F2, known as passive 4F. For passive 4F, there is a notable attention to others' needs. They will pay attention if someone else is uncomfortable. They are interested in others' tastes and habits. This makes them 2F-like, but 2F actually puts in the time on material issues. They remain active, and they do not compromise their own tastes in attempts to accommodate others, instead making proposals and discussions. Passive 4F is more likely to just give in and accept others' habits. They will not usually experiment culinarily, instead just asking what the other person likes. They will look for the most definite and confident answer. Passive 4F is the easiest subtype to find a common language with around physical matters. 4F3, known as weak 3F, weak 4F rather, is probably the subtype that usually comes to mind when you think about 4F. They're easily amenable to different material circumstances. If there is no hot water, weak 4F will use cold water. If they're out of a finished dish, they'll just start eating something random. Weak 4F has difficulty maintaining an acceptable standard of living. Without another's interference, their existence quickly becomes aesthetic, but they're not opposed to someone else solving these issues for them. Both weak 4F and 3F are susceptible to others' influence. It's worth paying attention to what kind of influence they expect and how to relate to it. 3F is constantly aware of their physical needs and places importance on their satisfaction. As such, they expect persistent but delicate help. Because of 3F's attention to detail, their needs are variable and require discussion. For weak 4F, everything is simpler, as they forget their physical requirements quickly, and those requirements that remain are so low that they are easy to meet. Weak 4F will be happy under most conditions. They need to live reasonably well and not be frequently uprooted. Weak 4F is the most sluggish and unpretentious subtype. Any questions? Any questions on anything physics or just anything in general?
Yes, what is the meaning of life? I must know, Curator.
42. Next question.
That's the best answer I've ever heard. Yes,
I
this
was
man
literally
knows.
about to say that's the best answer. And that's what I asked yesterday when he was like, hey, do you have any questions? But nobody heard me. But the joke lands when you say it. God damn it. Okay, sorry.
Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, emotion, everyone's favorite. Not really. 1E subtypes. 1E is a result attitude. It wants to remain in its current emotional state for as long as possible, and reacts poorly to changes in the emotions of others because it does not track them and is not interested in them. 1E is an aggressive attitude. It has more interest in its own emotions and feelings than those of others. They love to dive into their own emotional world. 1E is a strong attitude. It touches the environment with its emotions, influences the general atmosphere, and does not allow itself to be influenced easily by others. One of these manifestations usually shows up more than the others, which leads to 3 different subtypes. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could summarize these. 1E2, known as strong 1E. Strong 1E is highly inclined to include certain emotional states in themselves. For example, they may remember a past event and find themselves charged with emotions from that memory. Strong 1E is confident in the emotional color of what they are experiencing and strives to share this with the world. They want to influence others' feelings somehow, often through creative means. But unlike a 2E, strong 1E is mostly interested in conveying their own emotional state, not discussing the emotional state of others. Strong 1E is the most sociable subtype, the most inclined to emotional exchange. 1E3, known as aggressive 1E. Aggressive 1E is immersed in their own inner world, attentive to their own emotional state. They may seem secretive to others since they do not tend to share their emotional experiences. They enjoy being alone with their own feelings, their favorite music, a good book, the movie. Therefore, aggressive 1E is the least similar subtype to the classic 1E, depicted as violently manifesting its emotions in an immediately noticeable way. But it is still 1E and not 3E, even though 3E also goes deeply into itself because of its reluctance to change its emotional state upon prompts from others. Aggressive 1E is the most closed off subtype. 1E4, known as result 1E, does not analyze its emotions. The emotions seem to be outside result 1E's field of attention, so regulating behavior is difficult. Result 1E cries when they feel like crying, laugh when they feel like laughing, and no attempt to cope with these impulses will hold these emotions back. It is difficult for them to calm down and change their emotional direction. They stay in the same emotional space for a long time and may feel hurt if someone tries to get them to enter a different one. They do not know how to switch emotions and do not like doing this because they cannot trace where the emotions came from. Unlike Result 4E, Result 1E does share its feelings and is not easily influenced by the emotions of others. Result 1E is the most likely 1E subtype to vent. I encourage questions. If you want practical application, please ask me questions.
Here, can you link this? I'm sorry again, just
Yeah.
so I can kind of like go over it too. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like which one I am. I'm gonna have to do some deep dive on that.
Well, I'm gonna
Um,
save this. Thank you.
huh?
I'll just say I'm gonna save the source material.
Oh yeah,
Whatever curator just linked. Yep.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Thanks, curator. Um, yeah, I don't actually have like any questions. I just wanted to kind of digest this. I feel
Okay.
bad now because you literally were like, if you want a practical application, ask me questions, and I don't know like how to ask the right question to get what I want. Like what I usually want is to like know what it looks like in like a real life example, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Actually, I'll go over this in a practical application of Psychosophy after this. I recently got typed in Psychosophy, and the typist just finished the document, so we can go over that once we get through all these
Ooh.
subtype descriptions.
Okay, what's your type again?
FVLE. Looks like they affirmed it too.
Sweet. Yeah, I'd be super interested in that. All right, but yeah, no questions. Just gotta process and absorb this.
Okay. Now we have 2E subtypes. 2E is a process attitude. It keeps its own and others' feelings in its sphere of attention. They are interested in talking about these feelings. Um, and expressing them through various creative forms. 2E does not only worry about the realization of their own talent, but also the response of others to their creations. 2E is a passive attitude. Often the feelings of others are more interesting than 2E's own feelings. 2E loves to observe others' emotional manifestations, to liberate them, to open their inner world if shut. 2E has a strong attitude. It seeks to influence others emotionally, create an atmosphere, does not have problems using this for either good or ill. Thus, 3 subtypes. Two E1, known as strong 2E, is more straightforward than the other subtypes. They are very emotional, have difficulty restraining themselves, and pour out their feelings on others in a stormy stream. They like to talk about strangers and about their own feelings, on uh, to open their soul and get closer to others. Typically, strong 2E is engaged in some sort of expressive creativity like music or dance, and is interested in others' artistic creations. You will often hear quotes like, "Listen to this song, it's so cool," or "Look at how they dance in this video, it's so amazing." Sometimes they write poetry or prose, in which case it's very important that others read it and become inspired. This behavior leads to a certain suppression of others' feelings, which gives a feel of 1E, but strong 2E has a tireless and conscious interaction between their own feelings and those of others. For example, analyzing emotions to understand where they came from and how to express them accurately. Also, strong 2E is still looking for feedback. It's important for them not just to experience their own feelings, but to share them and get an appropriate response, while 1E accepts their emotional experiences as they are, not digging into them. Strong 2E is the most expressive and vivid subtype.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I actually do have a question, and I'm sorry the question took a while to
No, it's
load.
fine.
Okay, so I was just reading like aggressive 1E.
Hmm.
My question is, how interested are they in like others' experiences of their emotions?
Not very, since not only are they
Not
1E,
very?
which is a result and it's introverted, but it's also their subtype is, again, aggressive and introverted. So it's not going to be really about other people. It's more about outbursts in a
Yeah.
sense.
Okay, so would you say like overall 1E is just really not that interested in the way other people experience like their emotions?
I think 1E2 might be, to some extent. 1E4, perhaps, but not 1E3.
Huh, okay, thank you.
Probably, yeah, that's probably it. All right. Now we see, yeah, all this reading is kind of pointless, isn't it? I don't really want to give everyone homework, though. 2E3, Process 2E. Process 2E has a romantic view of the world, which may include dark colors or light ones. They see a sort of mystery in everything and like to dramatize what is happening. Process 2E loves long conversations about feelings, relational games, subtle flirting. They don't like it when everything is obvious, when all emotions lie on the surface. Such people seem uninteresting, and interest in them fades quickly. But they love secretive people with a deep and contradictory inner world. They do not present their feelings directly, but instead often avoid weighing in, which can make others doubt their sincerity. This complication may seem 3E-ish, but 3E does this because they have emotional complexes. While Process 2E does it for fun, 3E hides experiences not for fun or influence, but for fear of being misunderstood and difficulty acting natural. Process 2E is the most mysterious and controversial subtype. 2E4, known as passive 2E. Passive 2E is warm and soulful. They do not like heating up an interpersonal emotional situation and will do everything possible to avoid anyone feeling embarrassed. People are drawn to passive 2E because they inspire confidence and a feeling of comfort. Passive 2E is not characterized by intense emotional self-expression, rather their feelings are soft and pleasant for the sake of others. If they feel dislike or indifference towards someone else, which happens often, since many desire communication with passive 2E, they try not to demonstrate this directly. If the person is genuinely too intrusive, passive 2E will be able to reject them, but will do so politely and courteously to avoid hurt feelings. This calm and equanimity can make 2E look like 4E, but passive 2E is still a strong attitude. It affects others and creates an atmosphere around itself, which attracts people. While 4E is dependent on the atmosphere created by others, there is no aura of warmth surrounding 4E. Passive 2E is the most comfortable and inviting 2E subtype. Any questions? All right, so 3E subtypes. 3E is a process attitude, paying much attention to its own and others' emotions, how they are formed and expressed. 3E is an aggressive attitude, focused mostly on its own experiences, immersed in its inner emotional world. 3E is a weak attitude, easily influenced. It is easy to hurt 3E, which is unfortunate because they cannot cope with resentment or sadness very well on their own, not being in easy control of their own emotional state. It is also difficult for them to exert an emotional impact on others by creating a particular atmosphere, but they can support the general fun if they feel on the same wavelength with others. Let's look at these tendencies in detail. 3E1, known as aggressive 3E. Aggressive 3E is more immersed in its own world than the other subtypes. They are in no hurry to throw out their emotions to surrounding people. When in a bad mood, aggressive 3E retreats to their own inner world and does not respond much to help. It is very difficult for aggressive 3E to let go of resentment or anger, even if the offender makes attempts to repair the relationship. They need time to come to terms with the negativity they had to endure in the past. When aggressive 3E is in company with others, they rarely blend into the general mood, usually seeming detached instead. While they have emotional outbursts like all 3Es are inclined to, they are relatively rare. But when the outbursts do happen, they are intense and terrifying. Because of aggressive 3Es' limited inclination to social contact, they may look like 1E, but 1E is not too inclined to dig through their feelings. While aggressive 3E will do this even if nobody is available to help, They spend much energy on how others see them, what impression they have made, and how to cope with their emotions. Aggressive 3E is the most closed off and restrained 3E subtype. Three E two, known as Process 3E. Process 3 is more inclined than the other subtypes to sort things out. On a side note, all this reading, it's going to make for a good audiobook if anyone doesn't want to read it. But as I was, Process 3E is more inclined than the other subtypes to sort things out, to have extended, intimate conversations about feelings. They easily make contact with others even if they've had past negative experiences with that person. It is difficult for Process 3E to imagine their life of interaction with others. Each new relationship gives them pleasant excitement. They enjoy looking for hints and hidden meanings in others' words and actions. They also may generate um, conflict in order to get a certain emotional response. Process 3E realizes itself well in art, amateur performances, and working directly with people. In this way, it is like 2E, who is also interested in emotional interaction and finds realization in this sphere. But 2E is free, while Process 3E is much more tight, which makes it more likely that their feelings and interests in people are manifested in the form of short-term outbursts, followed by regret and shame. Process 3E fears appearing inappropriate and often doubts the impression they made. Process 3E is the most sociable and creative 3E subtype. Alright, now 3E4, and it's weak 3E. Weak 3E is usually externally calm. They do not draw attention to themselves and do not seek to entertain others. Rather, they want to be entertained with others' vivid impressions. Weak 3E is compliant in relationships, has a distaste of quarreling and an avoidance of scandal. They rarely experience violent outbursts of feeling. They are not inclined to resentment or emotional manipulation, so when with others, weak 3E comes off as a pleasant, courteous person who is not particularly talkative. This seeming lack of violent emotions and internal conflicts makes weak 3E look like 4E, but weak 3E is still distinguished by a certain romantic worldview and nervous shyness, both uncharacteristic of 4E. Weak 3E is the subtype with the most natural charm.
Testing, testing.
Yeah.
So usually I call weak when it comes to, the third and fourth position usually involves a little bit of influence.
Yep.
So is it due to the fact that, well, the aggressive attitude is less accentuated, that the 3E seems a little less jarred, like jaded,
That's because
when it comes to 3E4?
the 3E is more of an internal attitude. And so yes, that comes from the aggressive. So it's more internally focused on their own emotions. Meanwhile, you would have with 4E, as we'll see here soon, that they're going to be able to adapt to the emotions of others a lot easier,
Mhm.
comparatively.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, guess not. 4E subtypes. 4E's result attitude doesn't pay much attention to its own experiences, how they've been formed, what affects them, not characterized by self-examination. They have trouble understanding what impression they make on others also, since they do not track others' emotions much. 4E is a passive attitude, focused more on the emotional states of others. They can show and feel emotions that are expected of them, or emotions that are already contained in the situation, when alone. Typically, they remain calm and do not react strongly to things. 4E is a weak attitude, is susceptible to outside influences. Their mood depends on people around them. People who can give 4E some emotional problems to consider, which both amuses them and elevates their state of mind. Different 4Es do not behave in the same way. We therefore discuss the different ways 4E manifests. 4E1, known as result 4E, is drawn to external emotional stimuli, longs for vivid experiences, and behaves very expressively when charged by such experiences. By this behavior, that it can attract much attention from others. This is 1E-ish on the surface, but there are a few differences. Result 4E's emotionality is associated with the presence of certain external factors. For example, being surrounded by more emotional people, watching a movie, or listening to music. In their normal state, result 4E remains mostly emotionless, whereas 1E will simply put their feelings out there, or if there's nobody around, still experience them alone, rather. Also, result 4E, despite its noisy and conspicuous behavior, is not the soul of the company, but rather an object of influence by others. They take over the moods started by others, but do not create an atmosphere in the first place, like higher emotion does. Despite all of this, result 4E is the most brightly expressed and emotionally self-sufficient subtype. 4E2, known as passive 4E, is very interested in the feelings of others. They will listen to someone else's emotional outpourings with pleasure and try to understand their inner world. Typically, their emotional stimulus of choice is other people, rather than more inanimate stimuli like games or music. This passion for the experiences of others is similar to E, but passive 4E does not really try to directly influence the emotional state of others. If they need to win someone over, they will use other means, trying to motivate them to take action, reason logically, or care for their physical state as appropriate. Passive 4E is the 4E subtype that makes for the best psychologist and advisor. Lastly, we have 4E3, which is known as weak 4E. For weak 4E is the most stereotypical 4E, distinguished by calm and the absence of violent emotional manifestations. Even if everyone else is having fun, weak 4E will only smile slightly. Usually their face expresses nothing at all. They are distinguished by composure, prudence, and an exceptionally rational approach to problems, because their mind is not overtaken by feelings. It is not always easy to tell the difference between weak 4E genuine emotionlessness and 3E worried restraint, which can cause mistypes. The difference is 3E is always experiencing something emotional, and this is important. And when these impulses can no longer be suppressed, they are thrown to the outside. 3E accumulates their feelings and shows them in unexpected ways, whereas weak 4E does not have this dynamic. If you ask them what their mood is or if something has offended them, they will mostly just be confused. Observing a person for a long time, this difference between 3E and weak 4E will inevitably come out. Weak 4E is distinguished among the 4E subtypes by its constant equanimity and dispassion. All right, any questions? Or just anything to talk about?
Wait, anything to talk about?
Well, I mean, ideally it's related to this, but, you know.
Oh, okay. Well, then can I just at least verbally say that, like, and I'm not just saying this to be like, you know, to gas you up for no reason. I mean this legitimately. You are doing a great service, like, with this class, and I personally find it helpful, even though, like, reading it out word for word, like that like might not work for me exactly, but the fact that I can chime in at any point and ask questions, even like when you like moved on and like I said like, "Hey, can we go back?" and you answered my question. Like that is a genuinely good service. So I hope you know that. Just,
All
like
right.
I want to say the quiet part out loud, like you are doing a legitimately good service for a lot of people. Like just because we have some like feedback about like our different styles of learning does not mean you are teaching a bad class. That is not the case at all.
And indeed,
you're
I'd like to be exposed to different systems, you know. I was happy for the opportunity and to just hang out here with people. Just because someone's teaching a class doesn't mean I have to absorb it. I usually view that as my issue, not the teachers, you know. But yeah.
yeah, like, just because there's like one aspect of like the class that maybe like what like two people at most don't jive with, it jives with everyone else, and you're still doing like the service that's important, like to the two people that were like not jiving with like a certain aspect of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay,
Thank you
we
for
love
that.
you. Yeah, of course. No, I genuinely mean it, and I don't want you to think I'm just like, gassing you up for no reason, or like, oh, she just feels bad. Like, it's not like that. I genuinely mean it.
I understand.
Okay. Um, but yeah, I have no questions. It seems pretty clear cut to me. You're doing a good job, making things clear. So I'm good.
Okay. Here it says my type is FVLE, and they came to well, 1F4, and 2V3, 3L4, interestingly enough, and 4E3. So yeah, we'll get into that. They thought I was initially FDEL, though 3L and 4 became much more apparent to them as I continue to talk. I'm definitely not FLVE. Strong FV/FV club was glaringly obvious from the beginning of the session, as was 2V and weak logic. Great to get to know, seemed like a really benevolent person regardless of my own moral judgments, regardless of myself. If you have any, okay. Um,
Uh, okay, wait. Sorry. I didn't mean to like comment on that. What are the differences between those two types?
FELE and FEEL.
Yeah.
There's a few big things. One big one is like emotional expression with them, whereas the 4E and the FVLE is going to adapt to the emotional atmosphere and sort of like exaggerate, whereas the FEEL is going to have that third emotion. So they're going to be more, how you say, restrained, I suppose,
Wait,
comparatively.
wait. I'm sorry. Can you scroll back up, because when you say when you say letters out loud, like my brain struggles to like picture it in my head right away. I actually have to see the letters to like know which one you're referring to, because when you say it out loud, like my brain,
Okay.
I have a weird brain.
Well,
So
here's
you're FVLE. Okay.
Yeah, this is the one they typed me as. I exaggerate my emotions and try to adjust to the atmosphere. Whereas you look at FVEL and they're going to have that third emotion, making them more restrained emotionally. Also, when it comes to logic, they kind of adopt others' logic more so, to some extent, whereas the third logic is going to be a bit skeptical to some extent, and they have to look for contradictions to make
Oh.
sure it's thorough.
Can I
Yep.
can I guess your MBTI type now?
What?
Are you INTP?
Not even close.
Damn it. Okay, I tried, man.
Yeah, you tried.
When you say not even close, do you mean in terms of like none of the cognitive functions
Yes.
add up? Oh. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna cook on that. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I understand why they thought it was three. Definitely not FLVs. That's a good thing right there, because that would be exaggerated hedonist type. And so what's it here? They thought it was pretty clearly strong FV, such FV club, strong extroverted process will 2D. Apparently that was obvious to them. I mean, I don't know. Does anyone actually want me to go through this, or does anyone stop
I'm
care?
I'm actually
I am
interested,
interested.
but since yeah, like I'm personally interested to kind of, because this is a real world example of a specific type.
All
So
right.
this is actually right up my alley. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, you know, I'm here for the whole thing.
All right. So here
Bill,
they
I
they
think you accidentally sounded sarcastic.
Oh,
That was
I
just
wasn't.
me.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't being sarcastic.
Accidentally sounded sarcastic. I mean, I don't think people should join a class and not listen through the whole thing. So I view my time as valuable, and you all are lucky that I'm here. Oh, arrogance +10. But honestly, I could be doing any number of other things, but
Gil!
to be
I love
here
you,
with you
Gil.
guys.
Oh my god, he just you
And I'm not
cracked me up.
sarcastic. If I am, I'd tell you, you mofo.
Okay, but yeah, go ahead, curator. Let's like look through some of this. Probably not everything, because that is a lot of writing, bro. But like, just some like key points here. Like
Yeah, some
let's
key
dig into
points
it
you
if you're
can look at.
comfortable.
Yeah, that's fine by me. I was just worried about interest. So for the logic, they noted that I don't have much about. I'm not very sure about my thoughts and opinions, and I don't have opinions and struggles with that weak logic. I mean, do you really need me to read all this out? You can kind of read it yourself if you want.
Yeah, here, let me just I'll let me take a peek. Are you comfortable sharing this with,
Yeah, it's fine.
like a group of people? Like you're cool with it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Like, not sure about. Oh, okay. So your logic is kind of like mine, but still stronger than mine, but kind of similar. Like I'm kind of like that too. Okay. Okay. Having perspective. Would be extroverted logic. That's interesting how they worded that.
Yeah, because that's going to be the perspectives aspect. Theoretically, it could be
Yeah.
that'd be fourth or second, but obviously we would know that
You
wasn't the
cite
case.
you cited your sources. I love that. No, that's so funny to me for some reason. You're just like, I have an opinion and here's a study to back it up. It's like that's great, but it's also like not something that would occur to me. That's so funny. Can you dumb that down for me? Oh, buddy. Are you? No, I'm gonna stop guessing your MBTI type. I gotta click on that.
I
Okay.
think it's awesome.
His biggest insecurity is that he's dumb. Yeah, you're like the furthest thing from dumb though. Like that's obvious, honestly. But like I get worrying about that. Like I worry about that sometimes too, not gonna lie. Cuz I'm just like this is like what I think the thing is, but I could be totally wrong. That's like my style as well. Okay.
So Wraith had an interesting question about how I would differentiate 3E's difficulty with acting normal, and caution
Oh,
about
okay,
this.
yeah.
This was written in the 2E3 section of the document, with certain stereotypes about 3V as being insecure of how they are perceived. Um, so they want to know about the differential. Those could. Interesting thing there is the 3E is going to be more focused on the emotional realm, whereas the 3V is their overall personality. So that's referring to is my personality what the people like, or that kind of idea, as
Hmm.
opposed to their emotions or my emotions fitting in, something like that.
Curator, maybe we should chat sometime. Just like one on one, maybe like about the whole like doubts and insecurities in regards to things, cuz like I used to have like really bad social anxiety back in the day, and if you ever want to talk about it with someone who like just kind of gets it, I'm totally up for that, and
Yeah,
no
all right.
pressure obviously,
Uh-huh.
but just if you want. Okay. Uh let's see. Yeah, needs it to be proven, which is fair. And see that's a testament to your intelligence right there. Like if someone says something, you want to know you want it to be proven, like you want to know why. So, you know, that's cool. Okay. A good source. We love a good source. Conversation. Oh, this is so cool to see because like I'm like getting an actual like really detailed analysis,
Hmm.
like concrete example. Like this is I need to see more of these.
Yeah. I don't think I would. I do have one other, but it's not mine, so I don't want to share it.
Yeah, no, obviously you wouldn't want to share someone else's information like that. I'd be curious if this person... Is this person, like, typing people? Like, do they have, like, a waiting list that I can get on?
Yeah, they have a server. It's kind of small, and they're kind of a busy person, but
Oh, okay, yeah. Can you, like... Can you invite me? Or is this more like they invite people and it's their personal server?
it's a pretty small and relatively personal, but I suppose I could
Okay.
invite you.
Oh, I mean, no, like, if it's like that, you don't have to. I just wanted to know if it was, like, open to the public or not. That's what I was asking. Okay, yeah, your emotion is definitely way different from mine. Like, I am just in my feelings all the time. Man, how did you talk to me for 5 minutes and figure out my type, bro? How? Like, how did you do that? Jesus. Because, like, now that I'm reading everything, it's like, no, you're fucking right, and you knew it within, like, 5 minutes. What the heck? You Sherlock Holmes? Like... Kind of just a feeling. Yeah, I'm just going off of the vibes. Like, no, I feel that. That's so funny. Okay. Oh, that's some personal information right there.
Hmm?
Yeah, that's kind of like why I asked if you wanted to share it, because, like,
No, I didn't
doing
see
a
anything.
program... What was that?
I didn't see what it was.
Oh, okay. I will not read it out loud then if you want to decide.
I don't really care.
Okay. Yeah. Good that you're doing a program, I would say. Do you mind if I ask, like, kind of a personal question?
I mean, that's kind of whatever.
Okay. It says you're doing a program. Like therapy?
It's just an app.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I actually did that too, and it was very enlightening, I'd say. And I did that in tandem, like, with therapy, and it really helped a lot. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
man, like, just reading this is making me think, like, we should probably be friends, because, like, I kinda... I feel you, man, like...
Well, I don't even need you to feel me, okay? I'm all good.
Not like that! Oh my god. No, I relate to you, is what I mean. Jesus. Don't touch me. Okay, let's see. If you like a sensation, then you do it, and if you don't, then you don't do it. I mean, you're not wrong, I guess, but that's, like... I just love the simplicity of it. Like, it's just like, yeah, no, I mean, fair. Oh my god. Yeah, likes to make them happen. That's my struggle. I struggle to make things happen.
Yeah, that's a good addition, Vinny, that you said about the 3E. Again, it's more focused on that emotion,
Yeah.
less on the identity. Identity is where volition's at.
Yeah, that's interesting, Cheka. That's an interesting point.
I like how short the physics is.
What was that?
I like how short the physics description is.
Yeah, I know, like, just one and done. And I will never get over that quote either. That is just so funny to me. If you like a sensation. It just cracks me up so much. Okay. Links make it happen. Yes, consider himself very democratic. Samesies. Prestige and reputation are whatever. I definitely agree with that. Actually, like I really don't care about that. An associate of mine. Ooh. Labor talk. Likes to do things for other people and help them. Yeah, see, this is actually kind of like where I'm struggling with the like 1E thing because like I'm very like aware of my own emotions and like, express myself and whatnot, but I'm also equally as interested in like other people's emotions and how they like, you know, what I mean? Like how they like feel about something and how they like kind of like process something. I'm very interested in that. So I'm kind of torn on the 1E like aspect of what you like kind of typed me as.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how to verify whether I'm like 1E or not.
Well, let's think on that. I'll pull up a description.
Yeah. Like I mean it's like you said, I got to do some introspection like myself. Like you can't read my mind, so it's like not that easy. First emotion, the romantic.
I'll send in the chat too, so you can read on your own. But
Okay, thank you so much.
yeah, so this is a pretty good website, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Should be helpful. I try not to use it too much though, because it's when you isolate the attitudes, you miss out on the holistic type.
Yeah, then you can get like confused.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna read that in my own time, I think. All right.
Okay.
Well, you know what? Like for some reason, like my back is hurting. I'm ready to just like kind of socialize and like unwind at this point. But like, is there any way, Curator, we can like hang out later and you can screen share this again and then I can go through the rest of it? Like, because I reached about the halfway point before
Maybe.
my brain decided to shut off. But
Yeah,
I would
maybe.
still like to come back to this and like look at it more in depth because I like the real world example.
Mm-hmm.
Because like yeah, my brain shut off. My brain's just like, nope, okay, no more information. I'm done. So I am good at that point. Do we all want to hang out at the like in ENTJ Empire?
Oh, I'd be down, I would.
Okay.
Thank you again for the class and the opportunity to be here with everyone and listen along.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, again, Curator, like I wouldn't join these classes if I wasn't getting something out of it.
Yeah, I'll just stop recording now.